thank you very much for joining this conversation today. Can you give us a little bit of information about you, a background about you?
Yes. Well, I started programming on a Commodore 64, really copying the code. And then I started programming really when I was 10 on a IBM 8088 in GW Basic. And then I started in 1997 to create websites. And so when things were much simpler than now, when you just uploaded your HTML files on an FTP server. And then, well, I started creating web applications in Perl, and then in ASP.NET. And then when the world was coming towards this separation of concerns between the front end and back end, we created the APIs using still .NET, and then the front end using Angular. React was not much used at that moment until Angular went out with Angular 2. And then we had a big project that was about to start, and Angular 1 was the old things. Angular 2 was scaring because it completely changed. And so we tried React, which was in a 0. version, but well, it was a good choice because we never abandoned React since then. And now for the backend, we use Node.js. So we use JavaScript, TypeScript on the stack. And so, well, as for ReactBricks, it was an idea that I had at the end of 2019. We were using Gatsby together with WordPress at the time. And well, we were using advanced custom fields on WordPress and things like that to be sure authors couldn't mess up with things. And so they were filling in the gray forms of advanced custom fields in WordPress. Then we tried Gutenberg. It was quite at the beginning of Gutenberg, and we didn't find any advantage because what seemed to be visual editing on the admin, really on the React side, there was something else. So really it didn't match. So we wanted to have a better experience for us as developers, but we wanted to have a great experience for content creators. So what you have with tools like Wix, where you have visual editing, where users don't need any training in order to learn how to use a system. And in a way, with the headless CMSs now, which are really great for developers, you have the same problem of WordPress with advanced custom fields. In a way, users are still filling in gray forms. And so I wanted to create this tool. Well, then there was the lockdown. And so in a way, I had a bit more time to experiment and to create this first version. I was thinking, well, if we have this design system created with React components, the props that you can edit on the sidebar are just the props for your components. If I will be able to let the user edit the text directly using something like Slate or something like that, and so and for the images the same thing, we can create really something that is easy as Wix, but that is made in code, so with your own design system. And so I started putting this thing together, and then of course it turned out to be much more complex than I had think in the first place, because well, you have many problems to solve, like the coupling of CSS between the project that hosts the admin and your CSS, and the CSS that it is inside of our interface that should be the same that there is on that side. And so, well, iframes and all the problems that come with that. But really, it worked, and we found that the first users were really excited about it. we were lucky that we had a big startup, which is capbase.com, that started using our service and helped us passing from an MVP and having a more complete product. And so and then we created many new features, and V2 came out, and now we just released the V3 with many new features, and here we are.
Yeah, that's a really great, interesting, and more challenging, I would say, more interesting and challenging adventure, I would say. I think coming to, I think you talked about the problem with WordPress and people still working on filling form fields, handling with Gatsby, and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about why did you create ReactBricks, and what was the problem you had? Like, hey, this is an art problem with the existing WordPress and combination with other existing frameworks. They call it as a Gatsby or any other React frameworks. What was the challenge you had? I think you talked a little bit previously about WordPress and customization of the complex fields.
Well, yes, I think that one thing that you have with the standard decoupled APIs, where APIs are decoupled from the front end, they don't know how the content is presented in the front end, and so in a way this makes impossible to have this visual editing that you have in a monolithic tool. So the main problem that we want to solve for content creators is visual editing. As for developers, we solve the problem of going back and forth between your VS Code and your headless CMS, because with ReactBricks, if you want to add a new field, you don't have to add it to the headless or to WordPress and then add it to your GraphQL query if you are to your anyway with Next.js, and then use it in your React components. You just define a new field on the schema and you use it in your code. So it's really easy because it's just React. So that's what we solve for developers. And really, we solve another problem, that is that of training your users, because you give ReactBricks to your users and they know how to use it. It's like having Word in front of yourself. You just write the content. And maybe I can show you also a demo so that we can see it live how it works, if it's okay for you.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so well, I don't have the permission to share my screen.
Let me just
okay.
Yeah, I think you should be now.
Okay, if it's okay for you, I'd like to share just a couple of slides and then show a quick demo of ReactBricks, if it's okay for you.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to get some context around it. Yeah, sure.
Okay, yes, great. So I said that ReactBricks is a CMS with visual editing based on React components, and so you have two parts in ReactBricks: the React library that you use to create your content blocks, and then there is the software as a service that is like the headless part of ReactBricks. So I said that we created it because we think that headless CMSs are great for developers, but not for content creators. And we wanted all the advantages of headless CMSs, so API as a service, decoupled in a way from your front end, but no hassles in hosting the APIs because they are a service. The ability to use React components because we love React, and best-in-class visual editing experience like you have in Wix. And so we created the APIs. And as for React, the content blocks that make up your design system are React components. And the visual editing is two things. In a way, you need to be able to change the text directly, the images directly. And so you use ReactBricks exported visual editing component like text, rich text, image repeater into your JSX code. On the other side, there are that you cannot directly edit. Think of the background color. And so for this, you can export a schema where you map the props that you want to receive to controls that you see in the sidebar. So for example, in this way, the user can change the background color using this color picker control. And so the set of these content blocks make up your design system. And so you have a sort of Wix, but with your own design system. Let's say a Wix for corporate. And so everything turns around this concept of visually editable content blocks that we call bricks. And bricks, this is a problem that we solved. Like I told you, headless are decoupled, so they don't know how the content is presented. But because we want to have the same interface, the same bricks in the admin and the front end, we had the idea of putting the admin interface inside of the front end project. So you have your Next.js Gatsby project, you have this admin folder, and so the bricks are shared because they are in the same project. You host this project, so you host both the websites and the admin interface. So I show you ReactBricks in action. Mm-hmm. This is a project that I scaffolded using Next.js. Mm-hmm. And well, I can, here you see some default content that was loaded by the CLI because I chose to have some default content. And if I click here on the pencil to edit, we go to the admin interface. Mm-hmm. And so you see that on the left, I can change the page and I can edit the content. So here I can change the content. Mm-hmm. And you see that I can set styles and everything defined by the brick. So I have this text and I have this rich text. And in this rich text, I define that I want just bold and link, but I can choose whatever feature I want to enable on a rich text. And then I have all the features that I can tweak using the sidebar controls. So I can change the title size, I can change the text gradient, I can change the background color, but everything is defined by this component. So this component has a schema where it says that we want two collapsible groups. One is title, the other is layout. And in the title, you have this drop down for the gradient and this radio for the title size. Of course, all of these become props for this component in order to conditionally render what I need to render. So you have this part, that the central part here where you can change the content directly as if you were in Word. And I show you that for images, it's the same. You click and you can add your image, you can crop it, you can also define to have a fixed aspect ratio, you can provide your alternate text, so friendly name, and now the image is uploaded and is and all the responsive version are created on our server, and so all the versions of the images are served by a global CDN. So you don't have to wait the build time when you have many images on a Gatsby project, because the images are already optimized using ReactBricks at upload time. And so in your brick, you use our image tag. And also, if you want to switch from Next.js to Gatsby or vice versa, you can do it in a matter of minutes. You just start a new project from the CLI, you copy your bricks, you enter your environment variable, so that in order to connect to the same app, and you're good to go. You have all the images that work without having to change from one image tag to the other image tag. And so, well, this is how you can edit the content, either directly or with the or with these sidebar controls. Then you can preview your content in different resolution. You can preview it it's in dark mode, or having also, you can have also a full screen preview that is exactly what you will get on the front end, because we use the same component that there is on the front end to show the content. And then, you have the ability to have bricks inside of bricks. So, for example, I can add features, and so you see that I can change the props of this sub brick here, and so you can write on this sub brick, and you can also change the props here. And you have then the playground, where you can, let's say, you have the playground where you can see all of your design system. So these are all the bricks that you can use. You see that these bricks that are here are from an open source project by us, which is ReactBricks UI, which is a set of components made with Tailwind and TypeScript, already responsive, dark mode compatible, that you can use just as a reference. Because of course you will create your own, but if you want to do something similar to a brick that you already created, you can use them as a reference and start playing with ReactBricks with these bricks. And then on the settings part, you can, since we are admin, you can change all the props for this app. For example, add the new languages, the default language. You can set your production and staging build hooks, so that your users, your editors that will have just the deploy to staging and deploy to production button, if they are allowed to, because you can set, of course, permission for everything on your editors, will be able to trigger a redeploy of the static website on your Netlify or Vercel or what it is. So now you see that as I added the Italian language, you have this Italian tab. There is the language selection tab, and if I click on Italian, I can create a selection for this page. Okay, and now this is completely independent. Everything here. And I show you quickly the code. This is a Next.js project. Of course, you can have also Gatsby. There is also a started with create React app, but of course, for a website, you will choose Gatsby or Next.js to have better SEO. And you have the pages folder where there is this admin here, where there is the admin interface. And so you see that they are just wrappers around ReactBricks admin components. And there is the slug, which is the catch-all page, which uses the page viewer from ReactBricks. You just fetch the page, and then you pass it to the page viewer, but really you don't have to touch this part, essentially. And instead, in the ReactBricks folder, there is the configuration for ReactBricks. And in particular, we are interested in seeing these bricks here, which are our content blocks. Bricks are exported here from this index. And you see that there are all the bricks from ReactBricks UI that we are importing here from ReactBricks UI. Of course, in a real project, you will comment them out, and you will add your own bricks here. And so I'd like to show you this theme brick here. I show you how it is in the UI. Well, I can add this theme brick here. And you see that a theme has a background color that you can change, and you can change the vertical padding. And then there is this add new, because you can add new members. And you see that I can add 3 members and no more. And then we can see in a moment why. And so there is the image that you can upload. And then, okay, of course, you can change the name and the role. So let's see how this theme is created in code. Okay, this is the theme that is the container that have the title and then repeats the members. And this theme, you see that uses a text from ReactBricks, which is for the title. And so you just set a prop name, placeholder, and then this render block, which is the render function. So when you are writing here, you are really rendering this H1 tag here. And this is done with the tailwind, and you see that there is this H1 that is just a render function of children. And then there is the rich text, which is very similar, but here you have the allowed features. And so here is where I can add more features. At the moment, I can just have highlight. I show you that you can set this highlight, but I can add any feature. For example, you can have bold, code, headings, italic, link, order list, and order list. So let's add, for example, the bold. And you can provide render functions for everything. So you saw that when I highlighted, you saw this pink text because I have this render highlight function here. But I can also say that I have the render bold, for example, and here I can just provide my functional children and wrap the content as I want. So let's say B children, and if I want, here I can add a name and add whatever I want. So let's say that I want the text blue. Okay, and so now let me. You see that now when I apply the bold, it becomes blue.
Blue. Got it.
Okay, it is a B tag with the new class name that I applied. So you can enable rich text features and provide your own render functions. And then there is this repeater. This repeater is where the members will be put. And then there is the schema. So there is the schema with the name of this brick, the category, and this category lesson is why you see when you add a new brick, you see that there is this theme group because I gave this category of lesson. It's very useful to categorize your bricks in headings and features, etc. We have customers with more than 100 bricks, so it's important to categorize and be able to search by tag. Then there is the get default props. This is what you get when you create a new brick of this type. It will have these props when it starts. Then you have these repeater items, which is used by the repeater. So you see that you have an array of repeated items. These are all the type of repeated items that you can have. So you can have a repeater of members, a repeater of buttons, etc. You have these objects for each type that you can repeat. And this name here is the name of the prop that should match the prop name that you see in the repeater here. And then, yes, you have this item type, and the item type is exactly the type of the team member. So the team member in the schema has a name, which is this HG team member. Sorry. So you have these repeater items, and you can also provide a max number. So I chose max 3, and this is why I could not add more than 3 members. I can also provide the minimum number if I want. And when I create it, it will have the minimum number with the default for the repeated brick. And then you have decided props, and these are the controls that you want to change your props. So for example, you have this BG color. You remember you could change from white to green, and this is because I have a BG color of type select displayed as a color picker, because when you have a select, you can choose color, radio, or select. And for a color, you have these options, which are just value label objects. And just in the case of color, the value should have a certain shape, and it should be an object with at least the color property, because it is used by the colored bullets to choose the color. Then you can have anything else on this object. And here I added this class name because it comes in handy for Tailwind to apply this class. So you see that in the component, when I get the BG color prop, I use it in this way. I get the BG color dot class name in order to apply the right class name. And then there is another problem, which is this padding Y, which is the vertical padding. It is of type range. Here you have the range option. So mean free max, mean 0 max free step 1. And I use it here in this style to apply a padding top, but padding bottom in REM units. And then the team member is very similar. You have an image for the team member, you have a text for the name, a text for the role, and then based on this Twitter URL or LinkedIn or URL or GitHub URL, we conditionally render these icons with a link, and these are side-edit props of type text. So you see that I didn't show you, but when I focus over this member, you see that I can put here a Twitter URL, a LinkedIn URL, and a GitHub URL, and you see that the icons appear with a link. Of course, it says invalid URL. Why? Because I provided the validation function. This is the validate function. It takes the value, the single value as first argument, and I have all the props as a second argument, so that I can also do cross fields validations. And then there is many things that you can do. You can also have a show function so that you can conditionally show some controls based on the value of other controls. And I'd like to show you that the type that you have with the sidebar, you have Boolean, date, image, number, range, select, text, text area, but you have also this custom type. And if you choose custom, then you can provide your own component. And this is just a React functional component, which has a value on change interface, so that you can provide your own component to edit the data from the sidebar. So you want to change the color picker, you don't like the default from ReactBricks, you can get a library which has a better color picker if you like it more, and put it here. You can have a small map to pick latitude and longitude, whatever you want. And really, it's ReactBricks is very, very flexible. For example, you can also create your own visual editing components, like you can create your own visual editing component. In fact, we did it with a blog example where we created a code editor, so that in the admin you have the code editor, and then you have the code highlighted in the front end. And also for the rich text, now there is a component that is extensible, so that you can create your own plugins. There is a plugin system. You can create your own buttons and do whatever you want on the rich text editor. So it's a system that has good defaults, but that you can tweak to do almost whatever you want. And well, I think that I'd like to add is that we just released 2 days ago version 3.1, and you have a new interesting feature, which is the ability to have external content from a headless CMS inside of ReactBricks. So this is something that people ask many times. I have all my content in Contentful, or I have Shopify, and how can I do these things inside of ReactBricks? How can I have, for example, an entity that is used across pages in ReactBricks? Well, we don't want to be headless. So we don't provide the ability to have complex entities with many-to-many relationships. We think that that is not what ReactBricks should do. And so instead, we just created a way to get external content from anything. It could be Contentful, Airtable, Shopify. So it is based on the page types that you have in ReactBricks. In ReactBricks, you can have many page types. So for example, pages, products, blog. And so on the page type, you can define a get external data function, which just returns a promise that resolves to an object. And then this object is put on the page. Then how you can access it? You can, if you just want to render the content from the external source, you can just use a use page values hook from ReactBricks and get these values and print them. But you could also think that you want to override this value. For example, you have an e-commerce, and you want to provide a more marketing, a better name for the product from the marketing. So you can also have on your brick a map external data to props function, and it takes as a first argument the external data, and as a second argument the current props. It's a bit like the Redux map state to props. So you get the external data, you map as you want to the props of the brick. So for example, you can say that the title is the external data dot title, or better, it is the props dot title or external data dot title, so that you can override it, and as soon as you delete the title, you get back the title that you had in your Shopify or your headless CMS. So you can also change in a way the content in order this instance of the content, because we don't want to persist back the content on the headless, because we think that your headless is your single source of truth. But you can use the content from your headless CMS inside of your landing pages, inside of your website, and with the ability to override the content if you want. So that I think is a great feature for who is already using headless CMSs. We don't want to replace headless CMSs. We want to provide a great authoring tool for your content creators.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think we should consider doing some pair programming session where we can get the data, external data, can be from Contentful, and try to see how it fits with ReactBricks. Let's see how we can follow up on that.
Yes, yeah, that would be great. Yes, that would be great. Yes. I'd like also to create some example, for example, an e-commerce with data from Contentful and show how it works. So a peer programming session would be great.
Yeah, let's follow up on that, definitely. Yeah, I think moving on to the question is, can you tell us like how ReactBricks enhances the developer experience? I saw great examples, a great demo from you. Can you talk a little bit more about like, hey, what is the developer experience with ReactBricks?
Yes, well, the development experience is you just React. So the great thing is that it is just React. So you create your bricks, you can see them in your playground, you can add your props to your component and you're good to go. You don't have to add entities and add fields on your headless, and so you can just develop your these Lego bricks. So it's funny because it's just like creating your set of Lego bricks that are your content blocks. So I think that is very productive because you stay in your VS Code all the time, and when you're ready, you invite your editors to test out your bricks. But it's very productive from a point of view of the developer. And the other things really is that I think it's important that you don't need to train your users, because sometimes when you use some more advanced function of headless CMSs, you have to train your users, and in this way instead you just give them the interface. They know how to use it. They click on text, they click on images, they change props on the right. They are free to edit in a visual way, and they have good constraints, so they know that they cannot break the design system. So I think that they are at home, and so you don't have to lose time training your users to use your tool.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So that means being a developer, you give enough freedom to the content editor. They can play around with your design system, but you're also preventing them designing bad design or ugly design, because you're giving them a constraint. Because with your ReactBricks, you're allowed only to use only set of colors or set of dimensions. Like examples you saw, like only 3 profiles. You can provide them constraints so that they always build a good design. which is usable and prevent people from building bad sites. So you kind of indirectly helping them, everybody, especially the content editor, to build great websites. So they can focus on editing content, not focus on designing things. So they're all on in constraint with that. That's a great way to put it.
Yes, yes. It's not the content editor that should choose a padding or a margin. So an interface like Webflow is overkill for them, and they could do something that they don't need to do. They don't have to do.
So that means the content editor shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be a product designer or UX designer. Anybody, product manager or non-technical people, they can come to ReactBricks and they can play around with these React components, play around with it. They always come up with a good design, which sits aligned with the design system. And yeah, that's a great
Sure,
great way.
Yes, you can also choose which bricks are usable in which page type. So you can say that you have a page type for products and only some bricks are usable there, and you have the blog, and so in the blog you just let use the 4 or 5 brick that should come up in the blog page. So you can set good constraints. Yes.
Yeah, one question around, like, I as a company was building a lot of large scale websites. They have a dedicated design systems already invested. How somebody can start using ReactBricks? Can they already start consuming their existing React design system and start playing around, making it adaptable to ReactBricks and start using on it? Can you talk a little bit around that?
Well, if your design system is created in React, it's very easy. If it's not created in React, the first step is have it in JSX. So as you have your content as React components, it's really easy to convert it with ReactBricks, because you take in your JSX any text that should be edited, and you just turn it in a text or rich text, and you take your JSX and you put it in the render block function. And then you choose which rich text features you want to enable, and you provide your render function if the defaults for the props that you want the user to be able to change from the sidebar. So when you have a React component, it's really very, very quick to convert it to a ReactBricks component.
That sounds great. More a general question, what are the trends you see on recent front-end development, and how it's influencing the developer experience? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I think that we are seeing 2 trends that I see in this moment. One is that we are trying to reduce the JavaScript that we send on the client, and so we see all these frameworks that in a way go back to the server and to the web standards. And so on a way there are server components from React, and then you have these frameworks like Astro.build or Remix Run. And so in a way you need to, I think that using these frameworks, you can really reduce your JavaScript on the client to the minimum. And we needed to learn these patterns of island of dynamic content. And so I think that we will go to a separation of server components, which are just server, and the component that really need some dynamic features. So you really need JavaScript, as you needed JavaScript when there was just HTML and JavaScript. So if you have a slider, you need JavaScript. Otherwise, having all the React code that you have to hydrate on the client just to match what you have on the server, it's useless. And so I think that these great frameworks and the ability to use server components will improve much these. But from a developer point of view, we need to learn to think in terms of island of dynamic and static content. And well, the other thing is that we see all the rise of these no-code tools. And well, I think that they are still not suited for enterprise level applications. And so in a way, for example, let's see the website. I think that the corporate website starts with code. And this is why we created ReactBricks in this way. We don't want to be a no-code tool. You start with code, but you create this design system that your user will use as a no-code tool. And I'd like to see this thing also in the more complex application building world, because there are tools like Babel, like Retool, that can do much, but they cannot do everything. And I think that with more AI in the near future, we'll have tools that will be able to create more complex application, writing less code. And I think that this is thrilling, because now no code is not up to corporate applications, but I think that with some AI that now we have, we can have something that is very interesting in the future.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So that means to take out from your what you said, so it's more like no code is mainly for small use cases, not ready for enterprise level, complex level, not ready yet. And also the examples you gave about dynamic and static, rise of Astro, tools like that, I think we have to start thinking more in terms of the use case. For example, like if it's a simple portfolio website, it doesn't have a lot of dynamics, then it makes sense to have a less JavaScript or no JavaScript, just ship what's required. Or compared to Jamstack sites, what they talk about the API, if you have some dynamic components like Stripe API or some other API you want to connect, then ship with the JavaScript, with the dynamic server-side components, or thinking about it. So thinking on these use cases or context, we have to make the choices on the front end. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And what about these Next.js, Gatsby? Have you thought about providing more other support for other frameworks as well, like something based on Vue, something based on Angular?
Well, not in the short term. Well, we started with React because we were using React, and well, it happens that the more large communities that of React. So it's not a short-term goal, but yes. For example, I think that with the Vue, having a Vue component inside of React is something that you can do. And so I think that it could be a good candidate to be the next, but it's really not a short-term plan.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, right? The more majority of the front-end applications are built based on React, and React as the most common use case. Yeah, to start with, yeah, I think it makes sense. And do you have any blogs or podcasts or social media you get inspiration about front-end or developer experience you would like to share with us?
Well, unfortunately not, because really now I really don't have any time left for listening to podcasts, or so I read on Dev2 when I have time, but I don't have really any particular blogs that I follow in this moment. With the ReactBrick startup, I have to code, to do marketing, to do sales, and so I'm studying more marketing than coding at the moment. And so I really, it's a moment that I don't have time to listen to podcasts and blogs. So really, unfortunately, not.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. That's interesting, right? I think it's about you're learning from your experience, from your work, not from the other sources. So yeah, interesting. And any final thoughts or learnings or suggestions you would like to share? Someone who is building products or tools for developers, you learn from ReactBricks. Hey, these are the hard lessons I learned. I wish I know before starting ReactBricks. Do you want to share
Yes.
any final thoughts there?
Yes. Well, I think that an important thing is that a tool for developer is in a way like any other product. So you can think that, well, I am a developer, I am creating a tool for developers. So in a way you can say, well, if it works for me, it will work also for any other developer, and that is not true. You have to talk to your customers, you have to talk to your potential customers to understand what the needs of the other developers are. So you don't have to follow in this thing that it works for me, I do it for me, it will work for everybody. And so it's like any other product, you have to talk to your customers. And well, the other thing is that in a way you say, I'm talking to developers, so they speak my language. And so, well, I don't have to do marketing. When I talk to a developer, I can just give them all the features that I have. And instead, well, you have to explain the value also to a developer. You have to explain the value for him, the value for his customers. So it's important not to think, well, I do something for me, it will work for them, I don't have to explain, they talk my language, I give them docs and they are okay with that. So it's important that a tool for developers is like any other product. You have to learn, do the product marketing, learn your market, and find the fit for them. That is something that I didn't understand at the beginning at all.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. On the topic of product marketing, do you see any changes like, hey, it's a developer-focused market. Should I approach more on a developer? What are the platforms developer most probably spend? Are they on Stack Overflow or GitHub? Compared to the other products which are not developer-focused, where you have to spend more time on different social media platforms? Any thoughts or learnings there?
Well, lately I see that Discord is very used, so we created our community with Discord, and well, I think that I see these trends of people migrating from Slack, from Discord, and well, you can create a community there, and of course, if you create a product for developers, they are used to these kind of tools, so maybe this is a bit easier. And well, see, yes.
Yeah, makes sense. And Matthias, thank you very much for taking your time today. And yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks a lot.
Me too. Thank you, Anil. It was great to talk with you.